Welcome to Secure Management Faculties, where your mind is key before you unlock what is seen. Secure Agent Dreyfuse. Let's get those standard defaults out the way. Below, sell your guns tab. If you have an additional firearm, you want to make some extra currency, send that out. Follow the link, securemanagementfaculties.com. If you want to send me a message, go ahead and send me a message by going straight directly to the website. Head to my image, you'll see established contact. Send that message out, and then we can begin from there, and then I will respond promptly. Another thing as well, the support cash tag is below as well. If you want to send any form of support in the form of currency, the only rule is make sure it's for a reason. Let's jump into the topic, and we'll be talking about control, isolate tactic, and specifically we'll be talking about two functions. We'll be talking about the function in which there is a mundane layer, and then there's a building layer that's on the outside. So let's remember that mundane layer and a building layer on the outside. So what is the mundane layer? The mundane layer is whatever it is that you usually do. I talked about this in the previous caption or video about how you have certain people in this world that go after what I consider to be threshold or the telegraph, right? And those telegraph and thresholds can be used against a person because they are essentially undisputable. Now, if I'm not mistaken, it was in the video when I was talking about the farmer's bridge, right? So, but in this example, understand that life has many threshold and telegraph starting and ending points. Now, let me remind you exactly what those are. Every human is born and every human dies. If there's up, there is down. If there's left, if there's right, etc., so on. These thresholds are concentration points of telegraphs in which you're able to predict conversations based off of the end result and where they're going to go, because they don't have any breathing room outside of those starting and end points. And you see, the biggest thing that these control isolate tactics, when they're being used, is that these thresholds are used as a crutch, if you will, sadly. The true determinant of a case of anything that you're doing, an acknowledgement when defining something, is usually the starting point, the body, or the body paragraph, if you will, and then the end point. We all got the same starting point and we all got the same end point, but the story's context is what makes the defining trait of the situation and how things can be understood. And so if I'm describing something in detail, no matter if it's novice detail, intermediate, or high class, the point is, if these thresholds are essentially taken advantage of with negative intent, they can be used against you or attempted to be used against you. Obviously, if you're aware, you're able to react. But let's get into the form in which these thresholds can be used against you. So there's nothing wrong with having an understanding that everything has a starting and ending point. Generally, with everything that we do, everything has a yin and yang effect, if you will. Now, let's say you have a specific set of things that you're going to have to do. There's nothing you can do. There's a door that you as a human have to walk through. So there's only one door and you have to walk through that door. And remember, if in examples that I've said before, the person will stand by the door in the example and say, I know a human will walk through this door. Well, it's impossible to ignore the fact that a human is going to walk through the door, because the fact that it's designed for a human to walk through the door, and that's the only entry point to go into that facility set, location, or area. And so it's easy to harbor these thresholds and make claim to higher intelligence, especially when there's a lot of theme and situational context around it. And what happens is it can end up being a convincing mechanism for you as well negatively, and or it could be working against you in a sleeper-like fashion, right? It's nothing more than a doused up control tactic that will allow you to be put in a perception to eventually let it lose its sensitivity to you being observant of it. It reminds me of when someone says someone is insulin resistance, right? The communication of you being sensitive to that trigger being in place has essentially stopped, if you will, right? So when you're resistant to something, your stimulation and communication to something, in terms of speaking, using insulin as an example, that means that you no longer have the stimuli to communicate that this thing is happening, and it's just basically bouncing off and you're not sensing it at all anymore. Speaking more or less what the example said. So what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, what these people do, in conclusion, is they occupy these threshold, mundane things that you're going to do day in and day out, right? That's inescapable. Like I said, walking through the door, you have to engage in a specific activity. You have to use a key to start your engine, or you have to get in and start your vehicle, like things like that. It's those ending threats, starting and ending points that are inescapable, and those occupying things, if there seems to be changed in perception or taking control over, that's when that can make a reflective back to that person that's doing it, and also a reflective back to the person that is engaging in these activities. So just to set a quick example, not to drag this on too long, if you have a vehicle and then let's say it's an SUV, you get in that vehicle and the SUV is a push to start, there's a different type of set of mechanical habits of push to start versus insert and key and turn mechanism, right? So if I set up the vehicle to be pushed to start, right, and you get into habits of pushing to start, right, the only thing that I would have to do in this simple example is change that mechanism of push to start to something else entirely, and or, this is the sneaky part, have it still push to start, but change the mechanism function of the push to start. Let's say the push to start is literally less than a second when you push to start, but then I change it to the point where you have to hold it for about 5 seconds for it to start. So when you get inside of the vehicle, what's going to happen is you're going to push it and it's not going to start. And now you're in a whole disarray of confusion and control tactics of not being able to understand what is happening as you're pushing to start. Now, evaluation and you testing things out is another layer. But what did that potentially lead you down the path? Now that your vehicle's not starting, you're going to take it to the mechanic. And then let's say the mechanic is still me. I'm going to intercept you at the mechanic place. And I'm going to tell you that this is the problem. I'm going to have a layout form of the very issue that is happening. But it may be exaggerated to the fact that it could be fixed. But you are highlighted by this diagnostic that is true, that your vehicle didn't simply start. And so obviously further evaluation of your situation or problem would have been great, but in situations like when you need something to happen now, you're more prone to act in a certain way to get this job fixed or done because it is urgent. And so now you've made all these payments to fix a push to start item in your vehicle, and the problem is the vehicle was never broken, it was just altered because I seized the threshold of your ending point, because I know you're going to start the same way every time. That's come from wherever you're coming from, get in the vehicle and push to start. These people seize these mundane habits and they associate these habits as you being that person or that situation or those concentration and habits, because that's where you're going to end up. And they build systems around you to extract your efforts and basically your energy, your fruits, in the form of financial intention, in the form of a simple manual labor. Think all these things that these people do with negative consultation and intent towards you is meant for just seizing the application of putting you on the running mill. And I've said this before, like a human battery. The point is, be aware of the mundane formations that are being seized, right? Because you can't do nothing about them, because you're going to have to interact with these thresholds. Be aware of those mundane efforts and conclusive contexts when you end up at these ending points, and reevaluate them in mixture to the effect of the environment, relationship with people, and also the surrounding effects of how often the bigger surrounding formations kick in, and how much energy and effort you're losing when participating, when engaging under that influence. All right, secure management faculties, where your mind is key before you unlock what is seen. Security to Dreyfuse. Thanks for participating in Control, Isolate Tactic. Again, my website, Secure Management Faculties, down below. If you need to send me a message, go down to that website, hit that link, hit establish contact next to my professional image. If you need to make some extra currency, once again, hit the Sell Your Guns tab. It takes you straight to the Guns website. Send that additional firearm. I'll make some extra currency. That's a free default for the channel. Also, if you want to support, again, if you want to support, send only for a reason. The Secure Management Faculty support cash tag is below. Appreciate all who came to observe, to listen to Control, Isolate Tactic, and we'll continue on with the next upload. See you next time.